Doctor José Zayas-Castro nos va a hablar de una manera bastante personal sobre lo que es la ingeniería de su jornada y la esperanza de que continúe. Así que, doctor José Zayas-Castro, el sitio es de usted.
Gracias. Thank you. And good afternoon. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi más sincero agradecimiento a todos los miembros de la academia, a los que evaluaron, por haberme incluido en este grupo. I thank everybody that evaluated me and inducted me into the academy. It's a great pleasure, and I want to thank personally my dear friend and colleague, Yogi Goswami. Next. As we mature, I think that our origins, our context starts to gain an additional larger perspective. I come from the island of Puerto Rico. That's where I was born, which years ago this was the scenario in the island. Next. The island evolved, and although we all have an influence, at least my parents' generation and my generation, an influence or a foundation in sugarcane, it started evolving in something that was called Operations Bootstrap. Operation Bootstrap was heavily grounded on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, where the T and the E basically are the responsibility of engineering. Next. As I was growing up, I was interested in multiple things and paying attention to events that were happening at the same place concurrently. So from sports to philosophy to art, culture, and different aspects of science and social unrest that was going on around the hemisphere and actually around the world. And these are just a few faces and examples of some of those aspects. I started in the south of the island, moved to the northeast, then to the west, and then back and forth in the northwest. Next. A decision came what to do. That was a first major decision. All the previous background led to a series of decision points or inflection points, perhaps. And the decision was to go to study engineering at what we know as UPRM. Next. And then came major decisions. Initially, I entered into civil engineering. And again, I have everything in favor of all disciplines, but civil engineering was not as enticing to me. And I found industrial engineering. And then in engineering at that time, very common, we used to talk, or people used to talk, that engineering was present in everything that didn't have a life of its own. And that certainly will revise later. And then I entered with a new girlfriend who is my beloved wife of 42 plus years. Next. Now, what happened there is throughout my experiences, I was blessed by great people, two great mentors who are depicted here, Tony Riera and Luis Martin Vega. Some of you probably know Luis from many endeavors in engineering and in engineering education. I was able to be doing undergraduate research experience with Luis while I was at Maya West. And then the decision came what to do next. Next. And basically, we got married, and with the help of Tonya and Louis, we went to grad school. I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. My wife went to the University of SUNY Albany. And there I made, you can keep stay there. Thank you. There I did a master's, and as I was doing the master's, then a decision came. Okay, what to do next? What was my interest? And definitely I love the academic environment, and I became more and more inquisitive, more than what I had been before. Changed schools and worked a lot in an interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary way in a technological institution, the oldest engineering school in the United States, Rensselaer. Next. And once we were coming into completion, the question was to do next. I was lucky to get a faculty position at the University of Puerto Rico, Maya West. As our second child was born, our oldest boy, I started working hard and doing a lot of applied and research and consulting work in industrial engineering and engineering-based projects, and entering a lot into looking at the economic and cost analysis aspects of the impact of engineering-based projects. Next. As things keep working, then a major decision came, an opportunity that is very uncommon. This is not the traditional pathway of a faculty, at least within the US related system. I was offered to be department head as a tenure track assistant professor. To many people, that would be like almost a kiss of death. So I took the opportunity and started looking at things that were going on, different needs, the landscape of the island, and we tackled the needs of the department head on, focusing a lot on the graduate program, infusing research, particularly applied research, and going to interact with industry heavily. And it started to infuse a more entrepreneurial mindset among undergraduate students. I placed a lot of focus in diversifying the faculty and engage the community as much as possible. Next. As these efforts continue, also I enter working a lot with the Economic Development Administration, because that was the agency in charge of stimulating the economic engine in the island. Now, one of the things where my background helped a lot, I believe, was infusing what I mentioned here as engineering entrepreneurship, a different mentality. Operation Bootstrap have been great in several aspects, but everybody was being trained to work for somebody else. And there was very little aspirations to form your own businesses. Next. And as I ended up my tenure as department chair in the 1990s and kept working hard in the different aspects that I mentioned. Next. As that happened, there were some things that were already very, very clear. And one of our previous presenters already quoted Theodore von Karman. There was clarity now. Okay, engineering is present in everything that affects human life. That's very clear. Globalization was going to enter into a new stage, and the landscape in the island needed to change. As such, we needed to influence more and more effectively the student population so they will become more assertive. Also, there is this tendency that we have to underestimate the rate of technical change and overestimate the rate of social change. Next. As we kept working, I entered into the environment of visiting the National Science Foundation, enter into working very heavily in hands-on student learning and working with colleagues at Penn State, University of Washington, Sandia National Lab, and then became involved in how to improve the delivery of care. Next. Then I was asked to help a colleague and go to the dean's office. And again, the circumstances were very similar. We needed to increase the research activities, needed to provide more and better opportunities for students, and started interacting with many more recruiters, as well as external foundation, private foundations like the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. The Learning Factory was in full gear, and that we created a major interaction with industry. Next. But then an interesting decision came about. My wife had become a full-time instructor, and she had to make a decision if she wanted to move to do a PhD. She decided yes, and in 1999, we all moved to Columbia, Missouri. We had never been in Missouri before. Next. There, I went as a visiting professor and started and continued the different activities of networking, student-centric activities, and a major decision came. I was called from Maya West and I had to go back or resign, and I resigned and stayed in Missouri. But concurrently, somebody nominated me to move to USF, and next year I was going to USF, coming to USF. Next. I came here as department chair of industrial engineering, and at that time, the problems and situations in academia, we like to say, are very similar. What changes is the context and the scale and what things to do. At the same time, the National Academy was working on the grand challenges, and everything has a common denominator. Who do we serve? Who should we serve? Next. As such, I kept expanding the efforts that I was doing in health systems engineering, working with people in the healthcare sector, physicians, nurses, people in public health, to try to influence the well-being of individuals. Next. Then I was asked if I wanted to go to the dean's office, and then at the dean's office, I've been in the dean's office since January 2012, working with a bunch of great colleagues, larger context. Some of the questions are similar, and we developed a very nice strategic plan once Bob Bishop, who was our first presenter, came on board, and we have working in a series of aspects that you see on your left-hand side of the screen. Next. One of them has been at the core. I keep working in how to diversify the student population, but also with the purpose of diversifying, next, the faculty ranks across the engineering faculty ranks in the United States and abroad. And we have a series of programs that we have been working very, very hard at them. Next. The other aspect is I started working with other collaborators and enter into increasing the level of entrepreneurial activities under the auspices of the National Science Foundation, one of the major programs that have been put together to stimulate engineering and science entrepreneurship, the NSF I-Corps, that have become a model for even other agencies in the United States and abroad. USF is a major participant in this program. Now, next, as I think about this journey, it is very clear, and some of our distinguished colleagues here have already made the point, that engineering needs to keep pushing hard in terms of addressing societal needs. And we must continue to converge and work in cross-cutting, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary aspects. And you see those there, engineering. The only one that I missed there is agriculture. You know, the delivery of good, healthy food to everybody around the world. We must continue working hard in having a seat at the table to influence public policy. Some of our previous presenters have shared what they are doing, some projects. We need to continue working hard on that and even do more, because at times, depending on the stage, we may not be at the table, and continue to be humanity-centered. My mother used to tell me stories about individuals that were self-made. Well, I am not one of them. It does take a village. This is a sample of acknowledgement. If I started enumerating all of them that I will have to make, and this is just a sample. I have been blessed with a lot of people that have helped me, and they are very centric, and they are very good. Can you go back to the previous slide for a minute? And that goes from my parents to people like Bob Bishop and Yogi Goswami and Benjamin Colucci that I was here. And definitely next, to our family, my wife and our children, which we started with 3 of them. Today they are 6. And this is a very STEM-centric family. Engineers and scientists and very analytic. And the one in there, right in the middle, is what I would call engineering in training, which is our granddaughter. Finally, I want to thank you again for the opportunity, and I look forward with working with the Academy and collaborating with all those of you that are doing such interesting projects and endeavors. Muchísimas gracias.